I'm Garry King. I'm here at La Forêt Studio where we've just finished recording the Stadium Rock Drums Acid Loop Collection for Acid Pro by Magix. So what I have here is 16 tracks of drums, kick in, kick out, snare top and bottom, a second snare mic near the shell, 4 toms 10, 12, 2 floor toms 14 and 16, overhead left and right, hi-hat and ride, then I've got a mono room mic set in the middle, and at the end of the room I've got a stereo pair which really catch some nice reflections. So this is my layout setup, and what I did was I made a number of different time signatures with tempo markers, 120, 130, 140, 150 and so on. And then I imported 3 tracks that I like to play to, one up tempo, one mid tempo and one slow tempo track. And then I made duplicates of each session, so I had about 8 sessions in total. Once I recorded a full session, I zoomed right in, made sure that the first beat that I wanted was right on the grid, and then lined everything up around it to make sure everything was in phase. Then I'd go through and pick all the parts out that I wanted, cutting out and deleted everything that I didn't want to keep. Then I'd go into the 4 tom tracks, and everything around the tom hits I would cut out and put a nice little fade at the end of each tom hit, and then there's no need for a noise gate or anything like that. And then after listening back, if there's a tom hit that I didn't like, say with a lot of cymbal bleed on there, I could then replace that with one of the better, cleaner hits. Once I'd done all my edits for each section, I then zoomed right in, put the first beat of the part that I wanted on the grid to make sure that the very first transient of it was right on the grid. Then I would make some named markers so that I knew where I was so I didn't get too lost. Make sure it was in loop mode, press play, make sure it looped properly without any glitches, and then I would bounce that file down using the same name as the marker. So if we scroll through here, you can see sections that I've kept and deleted all the stuff I didn't want to keep. If we look at this part here and take the first hit that I want to start the loop with, zoom right in, and then make a named marker and an end marker to create another loop. So once all the sessions were recorded, cleaned up, bounced together and saved, it was a case of us sitting down and working out what kind of sound we wanted to go for, what comes under the category of stadium rock. And the other things we had to consider as well is because these are in a loops format, for example, like with the reverb on the snare especially, Once you start loading other instruments on, a lot of the reverb tails start to disappear. So over accentuated on the size of the reverb a little bit, and also the kick drum. Make sure the kick drum would always stand out in a mix. To make sure that everything was at the right levels, I took a guitar loop, keyboard loop and bass loop, and I added these to one of the straight 4/4 beats, and then I was able to balance the kit to those loops to give me a much better idea of how they would sit in a mix or an application. So that's pretty much it on the actual recording sessions themselves. Okay, so I thought you might like to see my on-screen mixer layout, and you'll see that there's nothing really overcomplicated going on here. Starting with the kick and then going all the way across here to the final input, which is the main room. So we got 16 inputs from the main drum room, and then these are sent over to my main submix buses. So we've got kick, snare, toms, metal, overheads, room, and then I've got a loops mix bus, percussion mix bus at the end, and then the submix buses go over to my main drum bus, which is then sent over to my main master bus out. And then if we come back over to the individual tracks themselves, I like to use the SSL channel strip on each one of the individual drums, as you can see right across. And then I use the C6 mono, starting off with various drum presets, adding a few personal tweaks to those. CL2 on the hats and on the ride. And then I really like to smash the main room mono mic with the V compressor, but on the main room stereo pair I just do a bit of high pass filtering as they got nice natural reflection, but to take out that low end rumble. And then if we go back over to the submix buses, where some more processing goes on, you'll see that I actually kept it quite simple. And this is the stereo live reverb I chose for these sessions. Just a bit of pre-delay on there, not over the top but giving it some big stage ambience. And a bit more control using the Kramer Pi on the main room submix bus. And then over to the main stereo drum bus out with a Kramer tape simulator and a stereo C4 on there as well. And on the main stereo master bus, I got the Maserati GRP stereo on a master setting, but with a little extra output, but no compression. But followed by the SSL classic stereo compressor. And finally, this all goes through the Ozone 8 elements. And again, the start off point was a preset on rock drums. Started off using the preset EQ, just did a few little tweaks there. Gave it a little bit of extra width with the stereo imaging, and I left everything else on a preset for the final levels. So that pretty much was my session layout for you to see with the mixer, the VSTs, plugins and so on. By the end of the recording sessions, I think we ended up with about 1,500 different parts, which I could then go through and pick out what I wanted. But this didn't include all the single drum hits, the individual cymbal hits, some percussion parts that I did as well. So as you can see, it's quite a body of work, but it was a lot of fun to do. But I have to say, by the end of it, I didn't really want to hear any drums again for quite a while. So that was my basic layout for you to see. And what we ended up with was a really good, universal, usable sound that could pretty much be applied to any musical application.